Alright, so I had this Mickey model that I had made for a past project, and I decided to import the camera and use that project as the starting point for this boss fight challenge. But in the end, I ended up not liking the Mickey model, so I went to Sketchfab and ended up getting a base mesh. I had an idea to make this devil character. So once I was on Sketchfab, I got the character, imported it into Blender, and then I used the alpha brush texture to sculpt onto the mesh and customize it. I textured the mesh with a mix shader and a couple of textures. At this point I thought the character worked, but I still needed to fill out the background, so I used Kitbash 3D, and I found these castle assets and I imported them into Blender with the cargo add-on. Using Mixamo, I animated my devil character and I gave him horns. Then I used images as planes to add animated lava. That's just waterfall footage. Then I went back on Sketchfab to find my knight hero and I animated him and I added him into the render. At this point the render was okay, but there were still some problems. The devil character I made was making the render times way longer and he was just glitching out in the render. I ended up finding out later that that was just a setting that I needed to be turned off. And lastly, I just wasn't liking the parts of the composition, so I felt like the bottom and middle were just wasted space. So again, I went back onto Sketchfab and ended up finding a new boss, which was this dragon, and I ended up using that as inspiration to change the render. Then I imported the dragon into Embergen because I had this idea to light its wings on fire while it swoops down. And I also imported the camera from the project file to match. Now that I had this dragon character and its flames, I imported it into Blender just to test out the scene. I was liking the direction of the scene, so I ended up filling out the foreground with more medieval props. I also went back into Embergen and created a few custom fire assets for the render. So right here I was getting close to finished, but my last step was to fix my lighting and my background. And so for my world lighting, I'm using HDRI connected to RGB curves node to adjust some colors. So right here I'm showing off the HDRI by itself. So I have this HDRI setup mixed into a noise texture setup that's creating the stars. So that's how I did the stars. And there's also a sky texture in there to make some additional lighting. Now the render is looking a lot brighter and more vibrant, but I still wasn't done. I added point lights on some of the fires and behind the walls to simulate fires on the castles and the walls. And almost all these lights have keyframes to flicker like fires. And that was basically my last step.